Okay, I'm going on to mute.
Okay. Go, Kev.
Okay, this year for Refuah, for Ayala Hart, Reina Bachena, Shifra Simcha Bat Yeta, and all Cholim of Klal Yisrael, Medinat Yisrael, and Am Yisrael.
Amen.
Okay, continuing with the Malocha, the next one is reaping. Prohibitions, we have 4 prohibitions with regards to Shabbos regarding reaping. First one, severing a plant from its place of growth, including from a flower pot, cutting flowers or picking fruit from a tree, tree climbing, and horse riding. Those are the 4 prohibitions. One is permitted to walk on grass, even though there's a possibility that some grass will be torn. If, however, one knows that the grass is going to be torn, such as when one runs on long wet grass, this should be avoided. One may smell flowers which are still attached to the soil. In contrast, inhaling the fragrance of fruit on a tree should be avoided, since it is more than likely that one will forget that it is Shabbos and will pick the fruit. One may not touch a tree or enjoy its shade, but one may touch a tree and enjoy its shade, but one may not shake it. Shake it, hang a coat on it, support a swing on it, or use it for any other purpose. So reaping is like you're pulling plants, like pulling stuff out of the ground. Not allowed to do that. But we reap what we sow. You know that expression. So, but that you can't apply that for Shabbos.
And if we say avoider or avoid it, which is it? Is it avoid
exactly,
as service, or is it avoid it? What do we do?
As long as we don't avoid the avodah. Avoider.
Avoider, avodah.
That's very good for you, Damon, because Kevin's actually the king of this.
I'm learning from the master, from Kevin, but I can never be Kevin. But just occasionally, I can impress the teacher, like Kevin. So,
absolutely.
All right, so I'll tell you what we're going to do now. I know Arthur is hearing, that's the main thing. I didn't want to address Derech Hashem yesterday.
I'm hearing.
Arthur. But it was important enough for me to wait for Arthur to teach Derech Hashem. It's a phenomenal work. So I just need a minute or so for Derech Hashem, and then we'll go straight to the Gemara shir. Okay, so last time what we discussed is that probably my favorite translation of the Ramchal, Derech Hashem, is Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan. He himself died also very young, I think 39 or 40. And he was an absolute genius. And he really contributed a lot to the Jewish world, taking Sephorim that were unavailable to us and making it easy to understand. So the Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, wrote this work. We hit the first verse yesterday, not yesterday, 2 days ago, and we're going to hit the second verse. Summary of the first verse, which is acknowledging the Creator's existence. Every Jew must believe and know that there exists a first being, without beginning or end, who brought all things into existence and continues to sustain them. This being is God. Okay, a couple of words to remember. What is this thing believe and know? Either you believe or you know. In other words, they're almost contradictory to each other in standard thought. You know, a belief is something you don't have evidence for, and knowledge is something that you do have evidence for. So either you believe something or not. So why does the Ramchal bring this term belief and know together? Because there's some aspects of knowledge, in other words, knowledge in how the transmission is handing down from Moshe Rabbeinu. So how do we know this is not just folklore? Well, one of the reasons it brings in the Kuzari is that if you have 3 million witnesses to an event, it's very different to 12 disciples listening to the rantings of somebody that's slightly delusional. It's very, very different. You know, anybody, or you have an illiterate prophet that suddenly came out with a work of literacy to to match William Shakespeare. There's got to be a little bit of suspicion. If I tell you guys privately that there's a pink elephant named Zorro from the planet Saturn, and we need to, start taking notes, you're going to put me in shady pants. So that being said, you have to take cognizance of the fact that there were 3 million witnesses to such an event. And for those that said such an event never happened, how do 3 million people cook up an idea simultaneously that can last for centuries? Even if somebody can lie to somebody else when they're in trouble, you generally don't want to lie to your children. There's something sacrosanct about that. So there's that knowledge. There's also the knowledge as far as having scientific proofs and looking at the world and seeing the genius of creative activity and the precision at which the universe came into play. So those are all two aspects of knowledge. The one is known as transmissional, traditional knowledge, and the other one is evidential knowledge. So that's one aspect. The second aspect, what do we mean like belief? Well, belief is the reality, and I'm not saying this is only the interpretation, that sometimes you can have knowledge, but the belief is the trust in that knowledge and the trust in the Creator. So, for example, you can be married and you can know who your spouse is. In other words, you've got a marriage document, you know who your spouse is, but do you know who your spouse is? Do you know that your spouse has been faithful to you? There's fidelity. Do you trust her with money? Do you trust that she's not going to mess around with you with other men? That has to do with belief. So the one aspect is you trust the facts. Yes, you're married to her. You trust she comes from a good family and she's got, etc. But the belief is trusting a person that you love, that they have your best interests in heart, you have their best interests in heart, and they want good for you. And the trust is when it looks like there's no God, to trust there is a God, and when it feels like there's no plan, that there is a plan, and when it feels like the universe is being vindictive against you, that in fact it's being kind towards you. So that's where my definition of where the belief comes from. I might be wrong, but it was something I was thinking about deeply, that it's something worth considering. The issue we touched last week was this issue of without beginning or end. What do we mean? Why is that a chiddush? As I said, from 1952, when they discovered with mathematical measurements of the universe that the universe worked in terms of expansion, and there was a Big Bang theory, obviously on Einsteinian physics, as well as Stephen Hawkins, etc. It has a beginning, the universe, and prior to that, science didn't match up with what the Torah said, because the Torah said there was always a beginning. And what we're saying is that the Creator is beyond time. He doesn't have a beginning of an end and an end. But in order to have a concept of what does it mean to be beyond space, in other words, not locked into the physical limitations of matter or antimatter, and without time, meaning without beginning of end, you have to have a concept of space and of time. And there exists a first being, meaning there is no other being, even before time exists. Time is a creation of Hashem. And then what did we end off on last time? The fact that Hashem not only brought things into all existence, and many people believe that, but continues to sustain them. I remember when Gavin first became frum, we had this argument. I said, Gavin, every leaf that falls and every bit of energy that continues in the universe is because of Hashem's continual rule, as it says in the davening. It does say it in the davening. And it took Gavin years to come to that conclusion, because it's not intuitive. The entire world believes that you have a God, like a child, that created a laboratory, watched his experiment like he didn't know what was going to happen, and left it after he got bored. You think a lot of people don't view the world like that he abandoned the world. But to know that he continues to sustain it is implication that if you're still alive, he cares, and he cares about you. All right. That's enough about Derech Hashem. Or enough about waffling on Derech Hashem. We're going to go to the Gemara. Yeah.
Can I just make a quick comment, a joke?
Okay. Sure.
As long as we don't have the pink elephant in the room.
Yeah. Or as long as we don't invest in a white elephant in business.
James,
Yeah.
Like you guys mentioned about the thing beyond time.
Yeah.
Not just beyond time, he's always on time as well.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh, you always said me, so amazing. Something happened on time. Like as I walked in, the guy gave me the deal. Like I could have been a second late, or something happens during the day, and it's just exactly well timed.
No, Hashem controls time totally. What I was saying is beyond time is God does not age with time. The normal ravishes of the human body is in a state of entropy. When you leave things, they tend to decay, and time is either is a creation. It's a constraint. So is space and matter a constraint, and God is beyond all of these things. We have a linear concept of time, past, present, and future. That's just our perception of time. Anyway, it's too big to even fathom, to be honest.
Listen, we battle to understand time. That's why everyone's late.
I don't even know where I put my car keys some of the time. Anyway, let's go, guys. I hope you didn't mind my explanation of Derech Hashem.
No, very good. Thanks, Damon.
Okay.
So you're going into it at good depth where I think we'll finish it in about 6 months. What do you think?
Yeah, listen, the point of it is the Ramchal doesn't waste one word. If there's 100%. A word there, it was a chosen word. Also thanks to Rabbi Ziskin from Aisha Torah that helped me learn Derech Hashem in his series in his class many years ago.
The final few Mishnahs of the previous chapter dealt with laws of an ox that galls. This chapter continues with delving more deeply into the details of these laws. The first Mishnah cites a dispute regarding a tough ox that galls a number of oxen. If an ox galls 4 or 5 oxen, one after another, while remaining a tam, its owner pays the owner of the last of the galled oxen his half damage payment from the body of the ox that galled. The last victim is the first to be paid. And if it, i.e. the ox that galled, is worth more than this payment, the excess is returned to the owner of the one that came before this one, i.e. to the owner of the second to last ox to be galled. And if the ox that galled is worth more than the payment of the last oxen, the excess is returned to the owner of the one that came before this one, i.e. the owner of the third to last ox to be galled. This is the rule. He who was damaged later benefits, i.e. he is first to be compensated. These are the words of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Shimon says, the owner of the ox that galled and the victim are both liable to pay for the damage. How so? If a tough ox worth 200 zuz galls an ox worth 200 zuz, and the carcass is worth nothing, this one, i.e. the victim, takes a mana, i.e. 100 zuz, of the tam's value in payment. And this one, i.e. the owner, takes a mana of its value. If the ox again galls another ox worth 200 zuz, the owner of the last ox gall takes a mana of the tam's value, and those preceding him, i.e. the owner of the tam and the first victim, this one takes 50 zuz, and that one takes 50 zuz. If the ox again galls another ox worth 200 zuz, the owner of the last ox galled takes a mana, and the one preceding him, i.e. the second last victim, takes 50 zuz, and the first two, i.e. the owner of the tam and the first victim, take a dana of gold, i.e. 25 zuz apiece. That's not my place. Each successive victim bears part of the responsibility for further gorings. Therefore, each must pay a portion of the new claims.
Excellently read. All right, let's go.
Sorry, I just lost my place there for a second. Sorry.
No problem, Gavin. It's small writing. I don't blame
Damon, so the question is there. I looked earlier, the dinar of gold. Why? There's no explanation for that. Why they got a dinar of gold. Now the money is the dinar of gold.
I'll explain it to you. If you give me one moment, I'll explain to you where the dinar came from of gold. Just give me 1 second. Okay, give me a sec, guys. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. and then it should become a little bit clearer. Okay, hang on a sec. I'll tell you this timing with this cat. I'm fond of her, but she can drive me crazy. All right, so let me explain to you where a dinner came from, Kevin. The dinner is a unit of measurement, right? And what the dinner implies is that it's a payment of 25 zuz. It's almost it's saying an American quarter. You know, when you say you pay a dime, you pay a quarter, etc.
Yeah.
So what we are saying is here is that if you have a look at the chart, I'm not going to repeat the whole chart again. By the time it comes to the payment where you've got the first victim, second victim, and third victim, where the original owner owned 12.5, owned 100%. Then he gave away just half of it. Anyway, you're ending up with a situation where Gavin, as the original owner, we said yesterday, owned, by the time the third victim was gored, he only was left with 12.5% because he owned 25 zuz. And 25 zuz is a dinar. And the same thing, Kevin, you owed 25 zuz to me because you caused me a certain amount of damage. Does that make sense? It's just a currency issue. That's all it is.
Okay, it's the value of a dinar is worth 25 zuz.
That's all.
So, Dan, can I ask you a question? Is that how much supper cost at that time, a dinner?
But you don't.
A dinner, yeah.
You don't. But it's not gold. You don't pay gold for your dinner, Arthur. You don't pay dinar for your dinner.
You haven't tasted my cooking, bro. You pay gold for it.
All right, guys, let's hit the Gemara. It was a good question. It's just a currency implying 25.
Yeah.
That's all. All right. So the Gemara starts. The Gemara explains Rabbi Meir's ruling. With whom does the first segment of our Mishnah accord? It is not in accord with Rabbi Yishmael, and it's not in accord with Rabbi Akiva. Okay? Why? I just want to share the Mishnah so that you guys actually have it in mind, because it's going to be difficult for you to remember offhand why it's not in accord with Rabbi Akiva. And we're going through this quickly. I can't spend too long on this part. Okay. Let's look at the first part of the Mishnah. Gavin, I don't know how to pronounce it. I think Rabbi Meir is the way Rabbi Cohen pronounces it, and I think you said Rabbi Meir. So I don't understand what the right pronunciation is. I'm going to go with, I think Rav Simcha Steinhauer and Rabbi Ran Cohen say Rabbi Meir. But that could be...
I'd say it's a 99% chance they're right.
Yeah, but maybe they're using the anglicized version. I don't know. But anyway, listen, let's just discuss the first. If an ox gores 4 or 5 oxen, one after another, while remaining a tum, its owner pays the owner of the last of the gored oxen his half damage payment from the body of the ox that gored. The last victim is the first to be paid. Okay? And if the ox that gored is worth more than this payment, the excess is returned to the owner of the one that came before this one. In other words, the second to last ox to be gored. And if the ox that gored is worth more than the payment for the last 2 oxen after it gored again, the excess is returned to the owner of the one that came before this one. In other words, the owner of the third to last ox to be gored. This is the rule. He who was damaged later benefits. He is first to be compensated. In other words, whoever was damaged last benefits first by being the first to be compensated. Right. Now that we understand that, that should give you a clue as to why there's a problem. Why is there a problem? Well, if you have a look, it's very straightforward in the Gemara. Okay? According to Rabbi Yishmael, he said that the victims are creditors of the tum's owner, right? And this ruling of he who was damaged later benefits is incorrect. Because the Mishnah should have said he was damaged earlier benefits. Why did we say this? Because if those incurred damage are the creditors of the damager, right, their claims have to be settled in the order that they occurred. For the claim of an earlier creditor generally takes precedence to that of a latter creditor. Okay? But the Mishnah in this case gives precedence to those who were damaged later. So clearly it doesn't regard the victims as creditors, and it doesn't accord with Rabbi Yishmael. And we said, but here we're dealing with damages. And what we're saying is, look, according to Rav Yishmael, damages and creditors are the same. You owe money for what damage you caused. Okay, but you're not partners with the owner of the ox. That's Rabbi Akiva. So Rav Yishmael said, yes, he damaged you and he owes you money. Therefore, he's a creditor. So whether somebody borrowed money from you or whether somebody damaged you, either way, they owe you money. Am I right, guys? They owe you money, yes?
Yes.
Fine. So if they owe you money and you have a few people that you basically, let's put it the other way around. You owe a few people money. The right thing to do is pay people in the order at which you owe money. If you took out 3 loans, the person that lent you the money first, you should pay first. The person that lent you the money afterwards gets paid second, and so on and so forth. And it's the same with the damager. If your ox damaged multiple people, the one that's waiting the longest should be the one that to be paid first. Why does a person that get damaged later is the one with preferential treatment? So this doesn't seem like Rabbi Yishmael. And if you were going to have an argument, the Gemara says, and say, well, these are damages, not creditors, we're saying, but here you're not dealing with the case where they're damages and creditors. Guys, I don't know whose phone's beeping, but can you kindly just put it on something? Like airplane mode, please, guys?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I was going to say is Gavin had a good point. What did he say last time? He said that, what happens if you have a case a few dafs ago of a creditor and a damager, etc. And we had that whole conversation. So Kevin, in that particular case, what the story was is if you have a damager and a creditor, it's different because the damager can come later, but the reason why the damager collects before the creditor is he's only got allowance, if it's a ton damage, to take from that particular ox, where a creditor can take from any movable or fixed asset. But here, when you've got 3 to 4 damages that happened with the oxen, remember it said 4 to 5, 3 to 4, it's just a term implying many, your ox damaged many people. And so, Kevin, if your ox damages many people, all that means is that you should pay in the order that you damaged. It's not like you have preferential treatment where you borrowed money from a few people and then a damager came, the damaged party came through because your ox did damage, and that both the creditor and the damager are fighting for the same ox. Then in that case, the damaged party wins because he can only collect from that animal. But here, when we say your ox scored 4 to 5 oxen, these are all damaged parties, and therefore there shouldn't be preferential treatment. It should be based in the order at which you borrowed money, or the order at which your ox damaged other oxen. Fine. That being the case, this cannot accord with Rabbi Yishmael. Why cannot it not accord with Rabbi Yishmael? Very simple. Because this Mishnah of Rabbi Meir turns around and says, look, the last one that was damaged needs to get paid first. And that's not according to Rabbi Yishmael at all. It has to be that whoever got damaged first gets paid first. And by the way, Rabbi Akiva has exactly the same argument. It's obvious. Rabbi Akiva wouldn't say anything else. So why does it not say this Gemara, Kevin, in terms of Rabbi Akiva? Because reason why is that Rabbi Akiva has got his own unique argument with us. So we bring in this as Rabbi Yishmael's argument, but in essence, it's both Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva's argument. But there's an argument exclusively for Rabbi Akiva, and that is what? According to Rabbi Akiva, the damaged partners are partners with the damage in the ox that gored. And this ruling of the ox that gored is worth more than the half payment. Okay? The excess is returned to the owner of the one that came before this one is incorrect. Okay? Because the Mishnah should have said it's returned to all of them. Okay, so what the problem is there is quite clearly is that I say, look, there are there are 3 people that got damaged, let's just say. Okay. So let's take this again. Gavin owns, Kev, you are feeling right? You seem out of it?
Just fine. No, I'm awake, but I'm tired.
Fine. Gavin's ox attacked Kevin's ox. Okay? Kevin is the first victim. Then Gavin's ox and Kevin's ox, because they're partners, attacked me as the second victim. Then what happened is now become a partner. Okay? Now, the last one attacked becomes the biggest shareholder, obviously. Then the ox that 3 of us need to look after together because we're partners in the ox, now damaged Arthur's ox as the third victim. Okay? And in that particular case, what it's saying is, look, Arthur as the last victim has to be paid his half damages. If his ox that was alive was worth 200 zuz, it's dead, carcass worth nothing, tacking ox 200 zuz, time payment, we owe Arthur 100 zuz. Since we owe Arthur 100 zuz, that's fine, he gets paid 100 zuz. But then there's 100 zuz excess in the animal. So what should happen then is the rest of us are still partners. Damon's a partner, Kevin's a partner, Gavin's a partner. And according to our respective shares, what should happen is we should split the money according to our share. What do we mean split the money according to our shares? Sorry, I nearly said a bad word. Just hang on. that was a tongue twister, guys. And then you split the money over shares. That's just so funny. All right, so what are we talking about shares? Well, Gavin, look at this for a Joe. You see, we're looking at March, right? So Arthur's a third victim. He gets the 400 zuz. He's now 50% owner of the ox, but there's still 50% remaining because the attacking ox is worth 200 zuz. Now, I, as the second victim, have got a 25% share because I was the second last to be damaged. Okay, so I now am a partner and I have to pay Arthur his 50 out of the 100 zuz, and I'm left with 50 zuz. Then Kevin, as the first victim, who originally had 100 zuz awarded to him from Gavin in the very beginning, because again, he had an ox 200 zuz, dead, worth nothing, owed 100 zuz, fine. Then Kevin had to pay me 50 zuz, Gavin paid me 50 zuz. Then now the disaster struck with the ox with Arthur, then Kevin has to pay 25 zuz towards Arthur. Gavin, the original owner, pays 25 zuz towards Arthur. They both paid over 12.5%. They both should remain with 12.5%. I paid over 50 zuz to Arthur because 50 zuz, 25 and 25 is 100. Arthur's happy, we miserable. I'm a 25% shareholder. Arthur's a 50% shareholder as the last victim. Kevin's a 12.5% shareholder. And Gavin, as the original owner, is a 12.5% shareholder. The problem that Rabbi Akiva has with this is we're saying as follows, okay? According to Rabbi Meir, he's saying Arthur got paid 100 zuz, which is 50% of the ox. If there's money left over, which there is 50% left, which is 100 zuz, then we should, as partners, divide it in 25% to the second victim, 12.5% to the first victim, and 12.5% to the original owner. But we don't do that. What happens is we look at the second victim. We don't pay victim 1 and 2 first. We immediately pay victim 3. For goodness sake, I'm not quite sure why, to be honest. I'm not quite sure why, because I should have sold the ox immediately and not waited for trial, because that is according to Rabbi Akiva, you can sell the ox immediately, but whatever, they dilly-dallied, they didn't do it. Did 2 gorings and a third goring, and everybody woke up miserable. In that being the case, Arthur gets paid first. Do you know why Arthur, as the third victim, gets paid first, guys? Take a guess.
Because he's done nothing wrong. That's why.
Correct. He's done nothing wrong. He's the only one that's looked after the ox where it hasn't damaged any further. So Arthur gets paid first. It's clearly what we owe, 100 zuz. Fine, that's done. So what it's saying is that myself, Kevin, and Gavin should split it respectively, as you see in the chart. But it doesn't say that. Rabbi Meir turns around and says that the second victim now gets paid whatever is owed. And what is the second victim actually owed, guys? He's actually owed
50.
No, Gav. According to Rabbi
100.
Meir, he's owed 100.
I'm looking at your drawing.
100.
No, that's
He's
according to Rabbi
Second
Akiva.
glory.
Guys, just
I'm going to
hold
point to
on.
Rabbi Akiva. Yeah.
No. Hold on for a sec, Gav. I want to show you something. There's a difference between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Akiva. Okay?
Yeah, I might jump along.
No. You're entitled to do that. Rabbi Akiva does hold according to this chart, but Rabbi Meir doesn't. That's the problem. Rabbi Meir is saying that the second victim is entitled to whatever's owed to him. Okay?
Yeah.
But
This
so
is what Arthur brought up. It looks like eventually you're running out of money because each guy keeps getting their 100.
Exactly. So what happens?
It doesn't make sense.
No, that's fine. So what
According
happens?
to Rabbi Akiva, I'm saying it doesn't make sense to you.
Okay, I know that, Gav. I know that. So what I'm saying is as follows. What Rabbi Meir is saying is as follows, right? Is that 100 zuz goes to Arthur. Okay? But what happens is the second victim gets sorted out if there's any money. Now, what we're going to find out later in the daf is does the second victim have to pay 50 zuz and then the original owner have to pay and they split it? In other words, does it work out according to Rabbi Akiva? We can't judge yet. It's too early in the daf. That's all I'm saying. Guys, you can't judge yet. But it seems on initial review that Arthur gets 100 zuz as the third victim and that I as the second victim, since there's 100 zuz left over, gets the 400 zuz. And that Kevin gets to suck eggs and gets nothing. And that Gavin loses everything. That's what it seems. It's going to become clearer, but that's the objection the Gemara has at the moment. And the reason, Gavin, I'm saying don't jump the gun is you can only jump the gun once the Gemara unfolds, is to the other factors. So the question the Gemara is going to ask is, well, even though it's working that Arthur as the third victim gets paid first, do we distribute the shares according to Rabbi Meir, like Rabbi Akiva, or do we do it like Rabbi Yishmael, where it would just say, listen, because Rabbi Meir turns around and says, look, the third victim gets everything that's owed to him in terms of half payment damages. If there's anything left over, second victim gets the excess. If there's anything left over, first victim gets the excess. If there's anything left over, the owner gets it. And that is contradicting Rabbi Akiva. Can you see that, guys?
Yeah.
All right. Now, isn't it easier to have it as a drawing so that you can understand it better? Is it not helpful?
Yeah, the drawings are, well, I don't know what you've done, but they're much clearer today.
Okay. Good. So, what the problem is, it's returned to all of, in other words, what they're saying is, why is the excess returned to the owner of the one that came before this one? It's incorrect, according to Rabbi Akiva. Instead, the Mishnah, according to Rabbi Meir, said it is returned to all of them. In other words, if each person who incurred damage became a partial owner on the ox that gored, the excess should be divided among all of them, because not all of them equally, hey? They're not, you don't have, if you've got two other victims, 50%, or three other victims, 33%. According to the share, that's their damage allocation, where we said 25%, 12.5%. Does that make sense? But I'm saying it should still be, according to Rabbi Akiva, distributed to all of them. That's what we in essence saying. So it can't be according to Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Meir, because it's only distributed the next down the line and not shared amongst the partners, because the partners can't be seen as victims here. So we see that the Mishnah's first segment is in accord with neither Rav Yishmael or Rabbi Akiva. Does that make sense, guys?
It does.
Okay, good. Let's go on. Yeah?
Sorry, they can't be seen as as victims because they have a share. Is that what they were saying?
No, Rabbi Akiva is saying anytime a victim gets damaged, right? As I said to you yesterday, Kev, if I only owe you, if I owe you 100 zuz, but my ox is only worth 100 zuz that attacked you, you keep my ox, finished and clear. It's your ox. You're not partners. You own it, lock, stock, and barrel. Only if there's excess, we partners to the degree that we need to sell the ox together so I can get my excess back. That's all. And what I'm saying is if it's a fat, big ox that killed maybe 2 or 3 other oxen, that the reality is we all become partners where each of you gets the share that you deserve, okay? And that as partners, we're responsible if there's damage down the line to other people. So the bottom line of it is partners are entitled to shares, but the major difference between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva is partners are responsible equally despite who had the custodian of the animal. So if, for example, say, for example, Kevin, myself, and Gavin owned a holiday home, right? We owned a holiday home on paper. And what happens is Kevin was visiting, and he left on the braai, and it burnt down the house and the neighbor's house. Now the neighbor's going to come around and sue us and say, listen, and I don't care if Kevin did it or any of you do it. You're all on the title deed. I want my money. You sort it out amongst yourselves. Does that make sense? Kevin pays the majority of the share according to even Rabbi Akiva, there's the majority of the share, but we all have to take a hit because we're partners in the property. According to Rav Yishmael, Kevin's totally responsible because he was the custodian. Even though we're all shareholders, he let the damage happen. That's the difference between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva. Is Rabbi Yishmael is saying, listen, whoever looked after the animal is fully responsible, Kevin. Kev, you're dropping off to sleep? And all I'm saying is Rabbi Akiva is saying, it's very straightforward, Kevin. We're all partners. Therefore, we all are. It doesn't matter who let who down. All right, let's go on. The Gemara answers, Rava said, really? The Mishnah is in accord with Rav Yishmael, who said that the damaged parties are creditor of the Tam's owner? And that which you ask, that instead of saying he was damaged later benefits, the Mishnah should have said he who damaged earlier benefits. The answer is as follows. Okay, so Kevin, what are we saying there?
He who damaged, okay, because the guy that is the last victim wasn't the custodian of ox.
No, forget about that. The Gemara is saying, look, it doesn't hold according to Rabbi Yishmael, because Rabbi Yishmael is saying if there's a succession of damages, the one that was damaged first should be paid first. The one that was damaged second should be paid second and third, tralala. Okay? Rabbi Meir is turning around and saying, no, it's not true. The last one that was damaged is paid first. Second to last paid second. And the third to last paid third, meaning that the last one benefits by getting paid first, not the first one. So what we are saying here is we're saying actually it is according to Rabbi Yishmael. How can that be? It's because Rava says, I'll explain to you the reason. We're talking about a case in the Mishnah where each successive victim seized the ox that gored to collect damages from, and thereby became like a paid custodian over it with regards to liability for further acts of damage. So what do we mean here? Very simple. Each successive victim, so Gavin owned the ox originally, Kevin was the first victim, he seized the ox. Now, I was worried that now I've been damaged and Arthur's been damaged. I'm worried that Kevin will be paid first or Arthur will seize the ox. So I kidnap the ox. Or let's just say, before even Kevin kidnaps the ox, Arthur's the third victim, but he knows he's never going to get paid if there are two other victims before him, Damon and Kevin. So therefore, Arthur decided, let's take matters in our own hands and kidnap the ox, because possession is 9/10 of the law. So even though Kevin is owed first as the first victim, if Arthur as the third victim kidnaps the ox, he gets paid first because he has the asset. Okay? So why does he sprint the tum away? Because he doesn't want other victims to collect from it. He wants to be the one to collect it, even though he was damaged last. And also sometimes he collects the ox because he doesn't trust the owner. Remember, we don't often with creditors do loans based on movable assets because you can hide it away, as the Gemara says. What do you mean? You can pretend there's no ox, you can sell it, whereas property ain't going anywhere. So therefore, you can always return to it and say, yes, you owe me the property. But movable property can be sold for gambling and drug habits and who knows what. Whereas a physical asset can't. So what might happen is I might not feel that Gavin is going to pay me. He might quickly sell the ox and say, I don't know what you're talking about. The ox ran away. And if I'm worried about that, what I'm going to do is quickly kidnap the ox before the owner of the attacking ox decides to get cute. Does that make sense, guys? All right. So anyway, by doing so, whoever kidnaps the ox is rendered the legal custodian over the ox. And as such, he's responsible, Kevin, to ensure that the ox would not perpetrate damage. So if it damages further, it's his responsibility. He alone is liable to compensate the victims. So Rabbi Akiva is saying, we partners. All of us are responsible. And Rabbi Yishmael is saying, no. Whoever kidnaps the ox is now the custodian and has to look after it. And it's not Gavin's problem as original owner if I, as the second victim, decided to kidnap it and forgot about it and let it attack Arthur's ox. I have to pay Arthur. What's it Gavin's fault? It's not his fault. And Gavin, that makes sense to me too, Rabbi Yishmael, by the way. It really does.
Yeah.
Okay, so accordingly, when the ox calls the second time in the custody of the first victim pays half the damage done to the second victim by forfeiting his right to the 100 zuz of the tum ox, the half damage payment due to him for the first goring. So then when the ox damages a third time while in the custody of the second victim forfeits 100 zuz to the third victim. Thus the last one to incur damage benefits, for he has damaged no one, according to Rashi, and retains the half damage payment. So what we're saying here is, according to Rav Yishmael, Gavin, this is what happens, right? Let's put it in order. Gavin, you have the ox. Kevin's the first victim. He doesn't trust you that you're not going to say the ox ran away. He kidnaps the ox. But Kevin is as negligent as you, and it damaged me as the second victim. Now, it's true that Kevin got 100 zuz from Gavin, because Gavin was original owner of the damaged ox. But because Kevin wasn't vigilant and he was the custodian, and now my ox was also worth 200 zuz dead, Kevin now owes me 100 zuz for the time payment. So whatever he gained from Gavin, he's losing. Okay? And he's lost his dead ox. So he's lost that. But more than that, the awarded half payment damages from Gavin, Kevin forfeited as the first victim to me, the second victim, because he failed to look after the ox. He was a bad custodian. I'm equally a bad second custodian. I forfeit my 100 zuz to Arthur because Arthur's 200 zuz ox is dead, and therefore I forfeit my 100 zuz. So the only one that ends up benefiting is Arthur with the 100 zuz. Why? Because Arthur was the only careful one out of all of us. But by the way, Gavin, as original owner, still gets to keep that 100 zuz. He's not a partner in the ox. He did no damage. It's not his fault. So Gavin's paid his dues. So he gets to keep the 100 zuz balance. All right? Now let me explain to you what this means. When the Gemara says, okay, guys, we've got 4 minutes. I need to quickly go through this. Just give me a second. So what are we saying? That and thereby becomes like a paid custodian over it with regards to liability for further acts of damage. So, Gavin, when it refers to a paid custodian, what it's saying is the reason why the victim is like the paid custodian is that, Kevin, you paid. And therefore, Kevin only got paid, or maybe Arthur or me, because we seized the ox. So we got paid for seizing the ox. So we like a paid custodian. Are you with me? You might not have paid us to look after your item, but it paid us in dividends to seize the item from you for the damage. And therefore, we like paid custodians. And what are paid custodians responsible for? For looking after people's stuff. Correct. Or, like, for example, and by the way, Gavin, you must know that even non-paid custodians are responsible for custody. Okay? So, for example, Gavin, say I take your car, your convertible car on a hot date because I don't have a car. Okay? Then what happens is you lend it to me for the hot date, but if I drink too much and land up in an accident and write off your car, just because you did me a favor and you lent it to me and I wasn't paid to look after the car, doesn't mean I'm off the hook. If anything, I definitely must pay for the damage of the car because you did me a favor. But even a paid custodian, which I did you the favor, and I looked after your house while you were in Australia, I've got no right to burn it down. I'm responsible for payment, whether you're a paid custodian or not a paid custodian. If somebody else's property is in your care, you are to pay for the damage it causes. Okay? Okay, guys.
Yeah.
All right, guys, I hope this share was helpful to you.